by and showing me the respect and deference to give me some time yesterday so we can talk in private.
You're most welcome.
I want to pick up on one of the themes we talked at length about, and that involves many of your past statements concerning Muslim Americans. And perhaps I just want to start with some of your language. In a speech you talked about folks who worshipped other gods and called it multiculturalism. You sort of mourn that we live in a country where that happens. Do you have any views that the Muslim faith or people who believe in worshiping quote unquote other gods, is that just something negative in our country?
No, Senator. You can look at my record. You don't have to take my word for it here today. My record is exquisite with respect to treating people of each and every faith with the dignity they deserve, to protect their right to practice their religion, or no religion for that matter, in the way that they want to. I've done that when I ran Thayer Aerospace and Century International.
And Mr., my time is limited, so if I can follow up.
But it's important because I've heard these critiques, and you raised it yesterday. I've worked closely with Muslim leaders, with Muslim countries. The CIA has saved countless, thousands of Muslim lives during my 15 months. This is at the core of who I am, Senator Booker, and I promise you that I will treat persons of each faith or no faith with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
Your words right now are really encouraging. Words do matter. It's not just actions. In a nation of bigotry, where you see too much bigotry and hatred, you and I both know words matter. So I do understand your actions and I will stipulate to the actions you just said, but I really want to get to the bottom of people who are going to be reading your past statements and give you a chance to further explain them. And I would like to go back to what we talked about, you and I, about this idea, and I'm quoting you, that a special obligation falls on Muslims in regards to terrorist attacks in our country. And you said something very dramatic, and I know you know this. You said that people who are silent are complicit in those terrorist attacks. Do you think that Muslim Americans in this country who serve in our military, who serve in the State Department, their failure to speak up, are they complicit in terrorist attacks?
Senator, each and every human, not just Americans, each and every human being has an obligation to push back against this extremist use of violence from whatever faith.
So you don't create a special class of people in this country based upon their religion that have a special obligation, as you said, to condemn terrorist attacks?
No, Senator. Having said that, I had a chance to talk about this yesterday. I'm not sure we ended up completely agreeing, but perhaps we did. I also do believe this firmly, that for certain places, for certain forms of violence, there are certain who are better positioned, folks who are more credible, more trustworthy, have a more shared experience. And so when it comes to making sure that we don't have terrorists brewing in places where Muslims congregate, there's a special place, right? They have it's more than a duty, more than a requirement. It's an opportunity, right, to be treated as, when someone from another faith says it can get characterized.
So if I can go on, because I have some more questions. So you think that Muslims in America who are in positions of leadership have a different category of obligation because of their religion? That's what I'm hearing you saying.
I don't see it. It's not an obligation. It's an opportunity.
Okay, so
Senator,
it's interesting because I would agree with you that silence in the face of injustice, we've seen this in the Holocaust, we've seen this in the Civil Rights Movement. I do agree with you that silence in the face of injustice lends strength to that injustice. I do have a problem, though, when you start dicing up American people and saying certain Americans, I don't care if it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Muslims that serve on my staff, that they're in positions of leadership that suddenly have a special obligation. I do believe, though, all of us, when this comes to violent actions or even violent words, have an obligation. And so I'm wondering, sir, do you know Frank Gaffney?
Yes, I do.
And you've been on his show dozens of times.
I was on his show some, yes, Senator.
I have here over 20 times, and he has talked about Muslims should be, who abide by the adherence of their faith, should be considered, should be tried for acts of sedition and should be prosecuted. Did you remain silent when you were on his show? Did you ever question? Because I have a lot of his statements here. Mm-hmm. Did you remain silent on the? And he's, from my notes at least, you're a friend of his. Were you silent in your position of authority against these words that are violative of the American Constitution? Were you silent with him?
Senator, my record on this is unambiguous.
Sir, then
Senator,
if that's your response, you did not say anything to call out his remarks. What about Bridget Gabriel? Do you know her?
I do.
Someone who runs an organization that has been considered a hate group by the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center. Were you silent? Did you ever call her out on her remarks that are hateful or bigoted?
Senator, I've spoken to a number of groups, and I believe my record with respect to tolerance and the equal treatment of people, I think
you never. Yes or no? Did you ever call her out?
Senator, I couldn't tell you. I don't recall each statement I've made over 54 years.
Okay. Well, I believe the special obligation that you talk about for Americans to condemn things that are attacking our Constitution or ideals would obligate you in your own definition to speak out. When it comes to
Senator, if I might, I have called out. We had a terrible fellow in Kansas named Fred Phelps.
Sir, I have a minute left.
And I called him out.
I have a minute left because I do want to give you a chance to speak about your comments on gay and lesbians. You said in a speech that mourning an America that endorses perversion and calls it an alternative lifestyle, those are your words, is being gay a perversion?
Senator, when I was a politician, I had a very clear view on whether it was appropriate for two same-sex persons to marry. I stand by that.
So you do not believe it's appropriate for two gay people to marry?
Senator, I continue to hold that view. It's the same view.
And so people in the State Department, I met some in Africa that are married under your leadership. You do not believe that that should be allowed?
Senator, I believe it's the case. We have married gay couples at the CIA. You should know I treated them with the exact same set of rights.
Do you believe that gay sex is a perversion? Yes or no?
Senator, if I can,
yes or no, sir. Do you believe that gay sex is a perversion? Because that's what you said here in one of your speeches. Yes or no? Do you believe gay sex is a perversion?
Senator, I'm going to give you the same answer I just gave you previously. My respect for every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation, is the same.
So I will conclude by saying,
if I'm confirmed,
I will conclude by saying, sir, you're going to be Secretary of State of the United States at a time that we have an increase in hate speech and hate actions against Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, Indian Americans. Hate acts are on the increase in our nation. You're going to be representing this country and their values abroad in nations where gay individuals are under untold persecution, untold violence. Your views do matter. You're going to be dealing with Muslim states and on Muslim issues. And I do not necessarily concur that you are put forward the values of our nation when you when you believe that there are people in our country that are perverse, and where you think that you create different categories of Americans and their obligations when it comes to condemning of violence.